Hey y'all, it's Terry from Sisterhood of the Traveling Brush, and today we're working on DIY wet distressing. I have cleaned and rinsed and allowed to dry. This is a piece of plywood cabinet. We'll cut it here into thirds. So I'm going to do 3 of these videos. I'm now going to use DIY cherry picked, DIY tarnished pearl, and DIY old and gray barnwood patina on this piece. I'm going to put my cherry picked on bottom. Just going to dampen this. There's not much left in here, so I'm going to go ahead and use right out of the container. Just going to dampen my brush. And there's 4 areas on this, so I'm going to do them all a little bit differently. But I know that I want to have my cherry picked on bottom. At least a couple of them, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. The DIY is clay-based paint. You can see it has, pretty good coverage, and it dries pretty quick. And it doesn't have like a built-in sealer, so when we get ready to wet distress this, we'll be able to go through the different layers, unless we somehow change them to not go through the different layers, which is what we're going to do with the old and gray patina. I'm going to put just the old and gray, which is like a patina top coat, to give a barnwood finish on the last segment. This one's almost dry. I'm going to put the old and gray here now as kind of a sealer. I probably could have let this dry a little bit more. See where it's smearing right there? That's my fault, but I'm going to do this anyway. And I'll put a couple of coats because of this picking up the lower coat. But this does good to kind of show you how that does. If you don't let your lower coat dry and you put something that has a water base over it, it's going to reactivate what's underneath, which is what's happened here. I sat in my bucket of water here, dropped a drop of water there, there, and there. That paint is reactivated, so I have to now wait for that to dry. So we're right now going to let this dry. We'll put another coat of gray, another coat of gray. Then we're going to just put another color of the cherry pick. And here we're just going to put a coat of the tarnished pearl. But as soon as the gray, second coat of the old and gray barnwood patina dries here, we'll put a coat of the tarnished pearl on top of that. Okay, I just put another coat of cherry pick, a second coat here. We have actually 2 coats, I think, of gray, old and gray here. And then 1 coat of cherry picked and 1 coat of old and gray here, and that one's dry. So we're going to put 1 coat of tarnished pearl on top of this. I'm a little bit worried. I'm going to try to stay away from that edge where it's wet there. And we're going to put 2 coats of old and gray here. We'll let that dry a tad, and we'll put the old and gray first. This is supposed to give like a barnwood type of a look finish to your wood. That's the purpose of this old and gray, but I'm using it as a top coat to block or seal, I guess is a better word, to seal this cherry pick. Remember earlier whenever we put that coat of old and gray on the cherry picked, because it's water based, it reactivated some of the cherry picked and left a little bit of a sort of a lavender look to the paint there. So you can see it's not doing that this time because the first coat sealed it. We're getting close to this edge now, so anything can happen. Got a little bit of a smear there. So we're going to put a coat of tarnished pearl here directly on top of this now. We're going to let this old and gray dry, and then we're going to put a coat of tarnished pearl on top of that. That's where just a tad of water apparently was on my finger and I couldn't even see it, and it reactivated that little bit there. See it? So you really have to be careful with water around this paint. So this very well could easily reactivate the cherry pick that's underneath it and cause a blend to start happening here instead of a cover up, instead of a second coat, especially here at the edge. So that's why I'm going to be careful with that until last. Even though this is very thick paint, very highly pigmented, you can still see some of the cherry picked through it. So be really careful here around the edge. Then I'm going to let this coat dry and put another coat, so this will be pretty solid when we start working on the, and you can see it is pulling a little bit through there, but we're going to let that be very dry and put, you know, thick where you don't see what's under it before we start on that. But now this has to dry pretty well. 1 coat of the cherry picked and 2 coats of tarnished pearl with no type of top coat in between. Here we have 2 coats of cherry picked. Here we have 1 coat of cherry picked, 2 coats of the gray patina, which works as a top coat sealer, and here we have just the gray and then the tarnished pearl on top. So the thing with DIY, it's a clay-based paint and it doesn't have any type of top coat or sealer in it. So as long as it is not sealed, it can always be reactivated with water. So I have a wet washcloth here. You could do this with a baby wipe. It's really good to get in the intricate areas. You could use a little paintbrush over a piece of wet paper towel, whatever you want to do. Or here's a couple of other options. A finishing sponge takes off a little bit more. An applicator pad works really nice, or just your kitchen scrubby if you're wanting a little more rubbed off. But here's where you have to be a little more careful. Okay, here we have 2 coats of, I'm going to put that a little closer for you to see everything. Here we have the 2 coats of tarnished pearl on top of the cherry picked, and I did that so that we would have full coverage over the cherry picked. It's a good thick paint with a lot of pigment and a lot of good coverage. So I'm just now going, it's dry. I painted this yesterday. So can you see that real well, what's going on there? That's looking really, really good. I'm getting that wet by accident, but I'm distressing definitely around the edges a little bit. That looks really, really nice. And what's coming through is the cherry picked underneath. But I'll hold this close enough for you to see, and I really, really like how that looks. But it is also starting to blend the cherry picked with the tarnished pearl a little bit, because it wasn't sealed underneath. So the more I rub on that and wet that, the more I'm not only going to reactivate the light color, the tarnished pearl, but I'm also reactivating the undercolor, which wasn't top coated, and they're going to start to blend together. So it's really easy to go from wet distressing to blending if you're not careful. On the next one, there's not a whole lot that's going to go through because this is 2 coats of cherry picked, which is a nice kind of a great maroon kind of a color. And so there's not going to be much of anything as far as another color for me to come back to. So I don't have to worry about any blending, and I don't have to worry about anything like that, but it's going to go all the way through to the wood pretty easily because all we did was reactivate the paint. On the next panel, that's where I put down the cherry picked, but I put down, this is where you would put a top coat, but the only top coat I had with me was old and gray when I was working on this panel. So we used that in between, and so that stopped the cherry picked from reactivating and won't reactivate itself because it works like a top coat, and is going to allow us to take the tarnished pearl off of the top, just like we did on our first panel. I'm gonna dampen my green pad just a little bit. And using it, I'm actually going through the gray and going through the cherry picked and going through the white. So that's a little bit too much. Let's try the finishing pad. This is softer, and you can buy these in several colors, and they come in different weights, I guess is a good way to put it. And so I'm going easy with this, but it's still a little bit tough. So the good and the bad have happened here. It went through exactly like it was supposed to. And you can see, if you didn't know any better, that this looks gray, but that's not how gray the patina is. But the gray puts a little bit of a haze over the cherry picked, so it is a sort of a grayish purple color that has distressed to. And when I used the scrubby pad, it was enough to dig through the uncured patina and paint. So while this paint will harden or cure in about 30 days and be, as hard as a piece of terracotta, until that time, it's still very fragile. So even though we top coated, if we were to treat it rough, it's going to go all the way through. And here for the last one, this is nothing but tarnished pearl on top of the gray patina. So if we were wanting to, there really wouldn't be a reason to do this with just the clear top coat. But an instance where you may have something like this happen is, say this was a piece of mahogany or something like that, and you were not wanting it to have bleed through, you would use a primer. So you would be going down to that or through. So there we go, and you can see the difference. It went down to the gray when I rubbed really hard. It went down to the wood, but it went down to the gray patina to show. So it is distressed in that way, but it's not the same color as this one, which allowed some of the purple to show through. Here, this is another one where you can see how DIY paint, how fast it dries, because we went through the top coat and into the other coat, but that's the same color. This is just a lighter coat of it, but there's a little bit of the underwood showing through in our distressing there. So very shortly, this is going to look like this again with just some distressed areas. And then this was the lighter color, the tarnished pearl on top of the cherry picked, and just being very careful and very gentle with the distressing. So I think that's my favorite, but this very well could have been done with a clear if I had had some, and we would be seeing purple, not a purple gray right there, which is what I intended, but it didn't work out that way. But I think you get the gist of it. If you have just the paint and it's more than one color, be careful. You just wipe over it and it's going to come back up, but you could start to blend with your other undercolor. If you don't want that to happen, put down your undercolor, put a clear top coat on top of that, and then put your second coat there. If you want to have a deeper distress and go down to your original wood, you could rub really hard, or you can use something like a scrubby sponge to do it. So I hope that helped. If you're interested in purchasing any of the DIY products, I have them for sale on my website, or you can DM me, message me, and we will get some ready and ship it out to you. Thanks.